بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وعظيمنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد. وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه الغر الميامين. الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية سيدي ومولاي علي بن أبي طالب. اللهم صل على محمد. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. أما بعد، يقول الله في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وقارون وفرعون وهامان ولقد جاءهم موسى بالبينات فاستكبروا في الأرض وما كانوا سابقين. The first of our salawat and honor of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli. The second in honor of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. The third with your loudest voices in honor of Imam Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman. Respected scholars, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. The story of Qarun is one of the most fascinating stories in the Holy Quran, a story from which many lessons may be learned and many examples may be derived, and a story which allows us to shed a contemporary light on the credit crunch and the current economic situation in the world. For when we look within the news and within the media generally, we find that there are many terms which indicate the plight of the economic markets. Terms such as bailouts and recessions, terms such as inflation and interest rates, highlight that there are major problems within the economic markets around the world which have affected many people. Wherever you look within the news media, there are people who are affected in different ways because of the current economic situation. And the idea that there are certain people who have lost their jobs, there are others who have lost their homes, there are others who have even reached a level in certain countries of contemplating committing suicide. Because it's as if their whole world revolved around the economic market and its success. As in, it seems long gone the champagne years of the 1990s, when there was a time of boom for many around the world, and there were many economic climates which were very strong at the time. Skyscrapers in Manhattan would never have envisaged that there'd be a day when they'd fall. Yet you found only recently many investment banks who were facing very difficult situations. And therefore you find that people began to reassess the economic climate within which they were living, in the idea that there were people who actually started questioning the economic system. In the past they thought communism would be the economic ideology that would bring success, but that seemed to have wavered. And then they thought capitalism was bound to bring success. Well, they noticed that there were many rich who were becoming richer. Yet at the same time, there were many poor who were becoming poorer. And people began to ask the question, then what is the economic system that in one way or the other will bring us the happiness that we are missing? Because even in the days of economic boom, there were still many who were complaining that the economic environment was lacking ethics. That the ethics of the economic environment was not to be seen anymore. People were earning, without a doubt, but while they were earning, they were also finishing people. It was as if it had become an environment of survival of the fittest, not survival of the nicest. And it was a dog-eat-dog world within the markets. And because of this, certain people came forward recently and asked the question, does the religion of Islam offer any solutions to an economic problem or no? In that if the religion of Islam is a holistic religion, then it should be able to cater for the political, the social, and at the same time the economic needs of an environment. As in, when we say we are Muslims, it means that we submit towards a particular syllabus or a particular ethos which will guide us in each and every one of our lives. When we need political direction, the state offers us advice. When we need social direction, there are particular guidelines which are given. When we need economic guidance, the question arises, how does Islam offer an economic state or an economic solution Because we find that if you ask yourself in your profession, whatever your profession is, if tomorrow somebody was to ask you, come sit next to me, I'd like to ask you a question. You're a Muslim, you'd say yes. Offer me an economic solution. That your prophet, you say he can offer you solutions to any issue. Either offer me an economic solution or offer me the structure of an economic state, as in we the human beings are involved in transactions on a regular basis. What would an economic state look like in the religion of Islam? The problem is that many Muslims would not know how to reply, and it's as simple as that. That many Muslims follow a religion in many cases culturally, not religiously. And that's why you find that blind following doesn't produce thinkers. And thinkers doesn't produce intellectual societies. Because if you don't have the thinkers who are there, then a society without thinkers will not produce the intellectual societies that are needed. Many in the Muslim communities, unfortunately, have not come about and discussed this issue. And then when the issue hit us in 2008, there weren't many Muslim academics who came forward to offer Islamic economic solutions. And mind you, when you look at many of the banks in the world today, there are many who are now giving you what are called Sharia investments. Or they are talking of Islamic banking. And these are only being offered recently. They were offered because certain Muslims wanted to engage in a Sharia compliant investment. But now they are being seen as a necessity in the idea that it's a possible solution to the economic state. And when we look at the history of Islam, some of the renowned scholars in Islamic history were those who had discussed the economic situation from the time of Ibn Khaldun when he wrote the Muqaddamah and discussed the concept of the Asabiyya and social integration, to Abu Hanifa, Abu Yusuf. Each one of these had brought about a discussion about the economic state. Each one of these had brought about an understanding of the Islamic state and the economic environment. That's why you find, if you were to look within the school of Ahlul Bayt, two scholars in the 20th century discussed the economic system. Please understand this point and bear with me on it. Two scholars in the Islamic state discussed the economic system. Ayatollah Mahmoud Taliqani in Iran in 1951 wrote a book called Islam and Property. And within this book he discussed the importance of understanding Islamic economics. And then in 1961, Sayyid Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr, may Allah bless his soul and the soul of Mahmoud Taliqani, he wrote his book, the famous book which is known as Our Economics, Iqtisaduna, which was a book which was needed at the time to discuss the position of economics within the Islamic state. Therefore the question arises, if Islam was to offer an Islamic state, what would the structure of this state entail? We'd like to discuss this area through looking at the story of Qarun within the Quran. Question number one, who is Qarun and how did he achieve his wealth? And what movements did he make which are seen as movements within the capitalist system? Number two, what is the theological foundation of an economic Islamic state? And why is it of the utmost importance to recognize God's position with your wealth? Number three, what is the aim of Islam of an ethical market within an operational market? How important is ethics within the movement of buying and selling? Number four, what did Islam mean when it wanted equitable distribution to understand the deprived nature of the poor and those who are deprived in the world? And number five, what can you take from the school of Ahlul Bayt in terms of the ways the Imams work economically? When we discuss this, we would have discussed the topic in depth. Qarun, as the verse states, was seen as one of the three main enemies of the Prophet Musa alayhi salam. Because when you look within Surah Al-Qasas, Surah 28 of the Quran, or you look within Surah Al-Ankabut, Surah 29 of the Quran, you find that whenever Qarun is mentioned, Fir'aun and Haman are mentioned alongside him. As the verse I quoted at the beginning, what does the verse say? وَقَارُونَ وَفِرْعَوْنَ وَهَامَانَ. Qarun, Fir'aun and Haman. These were seen as the three main enemies of the message of the Prophet Musa. As in the Prophet Musa alayhi salam, where was he born? He was born in the house and was raised in the house of Fir'aun. He was born in his mother's house at a time of oppression. His mother had known that Pharaoh had sent around his soldiers to kill any newborn male. because there was news given out that what had happened. There was news that was given out that Pharaoh had a prophecy given to him about the newborn males within the community, that one of them is going to overtake his kingdom. So therefore Pharaoh sent out his soldiers until eventually Asiya, when Moses' mother had rolled him down the Nile, Asiya had picked him up and wanted to protect him. He was therefore brought up in the house of Pharaoh. Of course he had to leave Egypt. Why? Because he was involved in an accidental issue of a fight between an Egyptian and Israelite. And when he left Egypt, he went towards Midian, where he married the Prophet Shu'aib's daughter. He then was ordered to return back to where? To Egypt, to bring about the message of God towards Pharaoh. His first enemy, therefore, that he faced was Pharaoh. And remember, Pharaoh, when you look at him, he had the audacity to say, Ana Rabbukum al-A'la. I am your Lord, the Most High. When a person has that audacity, would you speak to them with respect, or would you speak to them with vengeance? To some, if somebody spoke like this, you'd speak with vengeance. Whereas when Moses was ordered by Pharaoh, by his Lord, to go to Pharaoh, Moses was ordered to say, speak to him in a soft voice. When he asked, my Lord, how can I speak in a soft voice to someone who calls himself the Lord? He replied by saying, he brought you up for the first 15 years of your life. Respect that. Notice that because he was a fatherly figure to him, he had to show respect to him. Even though he was the type of person who said, I am God. Some of us, our fathers have shown us respect all our life. And they've never called themselves God, yet we don't show this type of soft voice to them when we speak. God tells him, when you speak to him in a soft voice. He went, when he debated him, the debate reached such a situation, which situation? That Pharaoh said that this Moses, his Lord seems to always protect him, and whenever he prays to his Lord, he raises his hands like this. When he raises his hands like this and looks up, it must indicate that his Lord is very high. But when we raise our hands and look up, it's not that we're looking up, it's that we're showing, oh God, wherever you are, we are lower than you. God cannot be put in a place. So what did Pharaoh do? He called Haman, the second person within the verse. What did the verse say? When he called Haman, the verse said, وَقَارُونَ وَفِرْعَوْنَ وَهَامَانَ. What did he tell Haman? Build me a spiral staircase. A spiral staircase to do what? A spiral staircase so I can kill the Lord of Musa. Many of you would have heard the story. And you know, today we have scaffolding, we have elevators, we have people wearing helmets and employment rights and safety rights. In those days, when they ordered the Israelites to build the spiral staircase, if you fell, you fell. That was the end of the case. And if you stayed alive, you stayed alive. The main thing is, I want a spiral staircase to kill the Lord of Musa. They would build the spiral staircase, Fir'aun and Haman together. Haman is what we would call today his personal advisor. They built the staircase until when he was reaching the top, he said to him, give me an arrow, I'll shoot the Lord of Musa. He shot, blood came down, and as we said, it turned out to be a pigeon which he had killed. Here you find that Haman was the second enemy, alongside Fir'aun, that both of them had worked together against the Prophet Musa alayhi salam. Within the system within which they were living, to the extent Fir'aun ordered his magicians to try and defeat the Prophet Musa alayhi salam. And as you know, the Prophet Musa was able to defeat them, and he was able to finish them as well there and then. You find therefore that the third person who joined Fir'aun and Haman was Qarun. Do you know what the first irony about Qarun is? Qarun is the first cousin of Nabi Musa. That's the first of the ironies. Qarun was the first cousin of Nabi Musa, as in you'd expect your first cousin to be the person who's most loyal to you. You'd expect he is of the same blood as you, somebody who'd protect you, somebody who'd honor you. Yet you find with Qarun, history repeats itself. As in, wasn't Zubair the first cousin of Ali ibn Abi Talib or no? Yet they both fought each other in the battle of Jamal. And wasn't Ubaydullah ibn Abbas the cousin of Imam al-Hassan? Yet he joined Muawiyah's army when he fought him. You find that sometimes in life you'd expect your first cousin to be close to you. Sometimes your first cousin may be your first enemy. And that's why when the Quran and Islam talks about family relations, it says that those who show mercy to their cousins will show mercy to them on the Day of Judgment. That there is a need for mercy between cousins. Qarun was somebody who was learned. He was learned not only with the revealed book, but also he was learned in what else? He was an alchemist, changing metal into gold. He had learned and acquired that trait of being able to change certain metals into gold. And when he acquired this ability, he began to build his business on this. That he recognized that if I am able to continue to do this, people will buy and sell from me, and I'll be able to make as much profit as I can. The narrations say to us that he built an empire. An empire where at the beginning, what did he do? At the beginning he employed the members of his community. Why? Because we know very well, if we end up building an empire in our life, isn't it only right that we try and sustain the members of our community as well? Isn't it right that we try and ethically help members of our community? If we have a major business, try and employ them into that business, to try and offer them opportunities. Qarun had built this empire. When he built it at the beginning, the children of Israel, he would tell them, you're more than welcome to come and work for me. And ethically, at the beginning, he was a person who, having known the book, the revealed book of God, he was a person who knew that this had come to him from the blessings of God. As this empire began to grow, the wealth began to get to him. That when people began to ask him, Qarun, where did you get your money from? He said, my own knowledge. As in, not from God? No, my own knowledge. It was my knowledge that brought me this wealth. I learned how to do all this alchemy, and I was therefore able to make this wealth. Yes, but how about God? No connection in my life. Look at what I've earned. Do I need anybody? Do you know what they used to say in one narration, what it says? In one narration it says that his treasure chest, the key for the treasure chest, the key, needed 9 people to lift it. A key, normally as in you just pick up a key and you go and open a chest. 9 people to lift the key for a treasure chest. As in, what type of money are we talking about here? That when a person has earned that much wealth, suddenly an arrogance begins to creep into him. People would say to him, this wealth, is it from you? No. Is it from you? Yes. But from nobody else. Theologically already there is no connection with the Creator. Now that the money has got to him, it's more of a case of how can I begin to enslave more people. When he'd begin to talk to his workers, he wouldn't say to them, you are my staff, you are now my slaves. And the way I look at you is that you work for me as slaves, nothing more. You work for me as slaves and you respect me as your master. Some people came to him and said to him, hold on, shouldn't you be saving this money and working for the akhirah? He'd reply, which akhirah? What are you talking about? There is no hereafter. Some would say to him, at least help the people in this world in the way God has helped you. Isn't that an economic, ethical thought? He said, no, I'll help the people as I want to help the people. Some would say to him, don't cause fasad in the earth. Why? He began to walk around with a robe. Normally a robe, you wear it. Let's say this is a robe. When I wear it, I don't need anybody to carry it for me. He said, no, I want this robe to be so long that when I walk, I want people to carry it for me as I'm walking. And on top of that, that metal, which I change into gold, put that gold on my robe. So that when I walk on the earth, people can see what my position is on this earth. This earth is my servant. How ironic it is when you say this earth is my servant. Because when you open your mouth in this way, sometimes the earth bites you back later on. And would you believe some people got affected by his wealth? What do I mean? How many times have you thought to yourself, you look at someone who's not religious but wealthy. How many times have you thought to yourself, I'm religious and I can't get any money. This person who's got no religion, God's given him all the wealth. How does this work? Likewise in the children of Israel, when they looked at the economic market of Qarun, some of them started saying, hold on, if this person, Qarun, isn't religious, doesn't believe in God, how comes he's got more money than any of us can ever dream of? And there were others who were saying, but when God gives you wealth, He's testing you with it as well. And this happened to 2 brothers with Nabi Musa alayhi salam. Nabi Musa says, what happened with these 2 brothers? One of them was a sincere worshipper of God, but he was poor. And the other was so wealthy, but doesn't worship at all. What happened was, the one who's sincere but poor would come to his brother and say, look, why don't you come towards the way of God? The way of the prophets of God. Why don't you come? It will bring you conviction and there'll be accountability as well. That brother would say, what are you talking about? God and God and God. Here I am. Look how wealthy I am. Look what I've earned. You are poor and you've got God. I am rich and I don't need any God. It goes to show you that God doesn't even care about you. They went away from each other. They keep discussing. They went away until one day what happened? The sincere but poor one, he thought to himself, you know what? My brother, he's rich but doesn't believe in God. Maybe he's right. Now when he thought this, he's at the bottom of the stairs in their house. The other brother who's at the top of the stairs thought, you know what? I'm wealthy, but I'm not even happy at all in my life. Maybe my brother's right. Maybe that I could be poor but sincere, I'll find happiness. The one who's at the bottom of the stairs, who originally was a believer, thought, you know what? Allow this belief. I don't believe in God anymore. The one at the top of the stairs, who wasn't religious, said, now I believe in God. They both came down the stairs to greet each other. The angel of death came and took both their souls away. And it went to show you that the one who had believed in God all his life, the last thing he did was disbelief in his Lord. And the one who didn't believe in God all his life, the last thing he did was do what? Was belief in his Lord. Yet there were people without a shadow of doubt who were extremely affected by the situation. That when they saw Qarun gaining this much money, many of them started saying, maybe there isn't a God. This Qarun, having gained all of this wealth, what happened to him? Fir'aun had approached him, and when Fir'aun had approached him, what did Fir'aun say to him? He said to him, listen, we have a common enemy between the two of us, and it's your cousin Musa. Let's find a way where we both plot to finish him off. So Qarun said, well, what's the way? He said, let's make an accusation against Musa. Which accusation? Let's make an accusation against Musa related to adultery. And truly, there is nothing worse which can savage a human being's community like when you spread false rumors about somebody. You find, what did Qarun do? Qarun, with all the wealth that he had, it still wouldn't bring him contentment. He still couldn't rest. And until today, there are wealthy people who are like this. Give them all the money in the world. Why is that person more famous than I am? Yeah, well, you've got wealth, aren't you? No. This wealth can't buy me what he has. I want what they have. You find that Qarun, with all the wealth that he has, still couldn't find rest. He told this lady, he said to when Musa gives a lecture, I want you in the middle of the crowd to do what? When Musa gives a lecture, I want you in the middle of the crowd to shout out that that man committed adultery with me. That man committed adultery with me. What happened was that Musa was giving a lecture. This lady came in the middle of the crowd. When she came, the Prophet ﷺ was giving the talk. She all of a sudden shouted out, that man committed adultery with me. You know what his reply was straight away? Who paid you to come and accuse me? Straight away. A prophet of God knows what the situation is. He said, who paid you to accuse me? She said, Qarun. He said, there you go. That man with all the wealth in the world, does he have happiness or no? No happiness. He's got everything. He's got keys which human beings can't lift. Yet he doesn't have that happiness that is there. He asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to punish him. The narration states that Qarun, who used to walk on the earth, with his robe sliding across the earth, with people carrying the robe while he's walking, that same Qarun was the one who the earth swallowed one day when he was standing on it with his arrogance. The earth was swallowing him into the ground because of the arrogance that he showed. The narration states to us that while the earth is swallowing him, he's shouting out, Musa, help me! Musa, help me! Musa, help me! There was no reply of any help from the Prophet Musa alayhi salam. Qarun passed away in this way. He thought that whatever on top of the earth belonged to him. But if the Lord who created the earth wants to take you, he'll take you in a split second. And you know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells Nabi Musa about the way Qarun died? He said, Musa, look at Qarun. He kept on asking for your help. He kept on asking for your help. And he kept on asking for your help. Had he once called out, O Lord of Musa, help me, I would have helped him at that moment. But he was so arrogant that the wealth that he owned, he believed was only his and nobody else's. And he was so arrogant that never once did he thank me for what I had given him in his life in terms of his wealth. Therefore the Quran gave us the story of Qarun. Why? Because the Quran wanted to show us that when you look at the credit crunch or the economic climate that you're living in today, don't think there wasn't an environment where the rich were getting richer and they were depriving the rights of the poor. Islam gave the example in order to build an economic system within the religion itself. That's why when Ayatollah Mahmoud Taliqani and when Sayyid Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr, both wrote their books in 1951 and 1961. Their aim was what? Their aim was to provide a framework for an Islamic economic system. In their aim, they mentioned one main point, that the aim of an Islamic economic system is to, number one, instill social justice. Number two, equitable distribution. And number three, looking after the deprived rights of the poor, or the rights of those who are not well off. That was the motto they used for building an economic system. And that's why when you look at the Islamic economic system, it differs with any other system in the sense that the first aspect, according to the Sayyid, when he discusses the economic system, the first aspect is the theological aspect. Some people say, what do you mean theological? Theological meaning the human's connection with God in every affair in their life. In the Islamic economic system, let's try and build it. Work with me on building a framework for Islamic economic thought. In the first step of the Islamic economic system is a recognition that everything in the heavens and the earth belongs to God and that we are just the trustees of it. This is the first aspect. That everything in the heavens and the earth belongs to God. We, the human being, are the trustees. As in, when I say that this is my house, or this is my plane, or this is my car, or whatever that I own it without a doubt as a trustee of it on the earth. But the original owner of every movement you make and every purchase you make, the original owner is God. Because of recognition that everything in the heavens and the earth belongs to Him. The moment I recognize this, I will then recognize that I have to be conscious of God in the way I look after what is a trust for me from God. Meaning what? Meaning that house that I own, or the car that I own, or whatever I own. When I recognize that everything originally belongs to the Lord of the heavens and the earth, I then have to be conscious of the fact that this that I own is a trust from Him and nothing more. Somebody then asked the question, but we are man and we are the representative of God on earth. You are right. Without a doubt, we are God's representative on earth. God is the ultimate possessor of everything that is on the earth. We are the representative. Does Islam therefore allow ownership? Yes, it does. On how many levels? 3 levels of ownership. Which 3 levels? Public ownership, state ownership, private ownership. Understand this point, please, and follow me on it. Public ownership or public state property, public property, is those natural resources which should be made accessible to each and every human being. Water is a public property. The forests, they are public property. All of these are natural resources which are the property of the public and should be made accessible to the public. In the first form of ownership of public property is the idea that all of these should be made accessible and not blocked off from the members of society. For example, you look in the Battle of Siffin, Muawiyah first had control of the water against Amir al-Mu'mineen. He had control of the water. When he had control of the water and the Imam's army was thirsty, was he willing to give any of the water to the Imam's army or no? No, he wasn't. Even though water is that which should be accessible to all, he maintained that the water belongs to him and shouldn't be given to anybody else. When the Imam's soldiers recaptured the water, what happened? When they recaptured the water, some of the soldiers, the Imam asked them, should we give water to his army or not? Some of them said no. Said to them, why? They said because of the fact that when he had the water, he wouldn't give to us. Yet if water within ownership is seen as being public property, the Imam looked at them. What did he say? He said, no, we will give water to them. Why? He said, because I cannot bear to see a horse in his army thirsty, let alone the human beings in his army. Look at the mentality here. That when the first level of how we are owners within the Islamic State is the first level that there is public property, which every human being has a right to. Water, natural resources. Then there is what is known as state property. What state property? There are certain aspects which the state has certain purchases made, certain means which have been acquired, either through peaceful means or through war, which the state decides to distribute and not privatize. Why? Because if they privatize, then the wealth will be in the hand of a few, and it won't be distributed equally. When the state has their property, the state decides as to how the state property is to be distributed. If I was to give you an example, if you look at the Battle of Khaybar and the Jews of Fadak. In the Battle of Khaybar, Rasulullah defeated the Jews of Khaybar. When he defeated the Jews of Khaybar, the spoils of war became state property. When they became state property, it was up to the state how it distributes them. So the states would title the distribution under Ghanaim. Ghanaim being, amongst other things, not the only definition, that which is earned from the spoils of war. Rasulullah would distribute the Ghanaim because it would be state property. When Fadak was won, Fadak wasn't won in war. Fadak, the Jews of Fadak, when they saw the Jews of Khaybar defeated, they said, Muhammad, we did not fight you, and we're not going to fight you. Fadak now becomes your land. It comes under state property. It comes under state property, not known as Ghanaim, but known as Fay. Fay means what? Means a form of state property which the Prophet of God can decide to distribute on behalf of the Islamic State. And therefore he gave Fadak to Fatima al-Zahra. And therefore those who say Fadak is an inheritance for Fatima, it was given to her while she was alive, not after he died. It was given to her in the 7th year after Hijrah. Those who say it was inheritance, it wasn't. It was given to her as part of state property which was to be distributed. State property isn't to be privatized in most cases, because the wealth will be in the hands of a few. That's number 2. Number 3, the third type of ownership, private property. And that's the ownership we're all allowed in the Islamic State. Each one of us has a right to own our own property, don't we, in Islam? As in, I can have my own property, and I should seek to defend that property. Someone came to me and said that if somebody tries to steal from my house, Rasulullah has a hadith where he says, whoever protects his house, whoever protects his property will die like a martyr. Because that property in the Islamic State is your own property and your own ownership. The state allows you to have your own private property in contrast to state property and in contrast to public property. And nobody is allowed to come into your property and take the honor away from your property. Ammar bin Jundub, when he sold his house to one of the Ansar, he sold his house to one of the Ansar. When he sold it, you know what he said? He said that I'll sell you my house, but I have a tree in the back garden, and I want to come and visit that tree. And he must have had an inclination towards trees, towards visiting them. And so what happened was, he sold the house, there was a tree right at the back. He'd come every day. When he'd come every day, what would he do? He'd come through the house. No salamu alaikum, no ya Allah. No, just come straight through the house, go to his tree, send his salam, and leave. The person who owned this property was wondering, hold on, I bought this house, yet this man told me that he still wants to visit his tree. This property, in an Islamic state, what's the situation on it? He went to Rasulullah and said, Ya Rasulullah, do you know Ammar bin Jundub? Said, yes, of course I do. And by the way, Ammar bin Jundub later on, only God knows what havoc he caused in the world of hadith alongside Muawiyah. Ammar bin Jundub was there. Rasulullah, the man asked him, he said to him, Ya Rasulullah, I bought a house, but there's a tree at the back, and this man wants to keep visiting his tree. Rasulullah said, go and tell him that you know that tree, stop it, give it to us in the contract, we'll buy it off you. He went and told Ammar, I said, no, I won't sell it to you. He then said to the man, okay, go and tell him, what will we do? Go and tell him that we will come and replace that tree with a tree for him in heaven. Let him forfeit this tree, and we'll give him a tree in heaven. Let Muhammad keep his heavens to himself. Do you know what Rasulullah said? Go to that tree and rip it off. Take it off. Why? Because that property is your right in Islamic economics. The public property of water and natural resources is open to the public. The state has certain property which it distributes. But private property, you've bought from your own money, that land is yours. Nobody can come and simply say, I want that tree. That tree, if it's an interference in your land, You irrigate that tree and take it out. That was on the first level. That's whatever you own. Originally God is the owner, but that you have different rights. Then on the second level was the aspect of what? The aspect of ethics within the markets. And this very much relates to the credit crunch. Because remember, in the credit crunch on the first level, there is no conception that God is the sole owner of our property. I'm the owner and nobody can come near it. On the second level in the credit crunch, ethics had left many of these economic centers. I remember meeting someone who told me that they were involved with a manager at work. One day somebody came in the middle of the credit crunch to this manager. Said to him, you have to sack 9 of your team. I have to sack them? Yes, you have to sack 9 of your team. Someone from higher up told him. And you know higher up, you never meet higher up, do you? You don't know who's higher up. Those offices on the 33rd floor, nobody goes near. Although we have a fair idea who it might be. But normally those people, you don't go near them. Somebody higher up has given them a call. 9 of your team, sack them. Look at the lack of ethics in a market. In operational markets, in the religion of Islam, what do you need in an operational market? You need private ownership to be allowed. You need contracts to be allowed. And secure trade. This person, what did he do? This person, he came forward and he was told, you have to sack 9 of your staff. He went ahead and he had to have that dreaded task of sacking each of his staff. And anybody who's had to go through that, it's the worst moment when you have to sack each of your staff. After he had sacked each one of them, each of the 9, then he got the call up, come upstairs please. So he managed to make it to the dreaded upstairs. You know, 33rd floor. He managed to make it to the dreaded upstairs, he got in. They said to him, thank you for all your hard work, you're now sacked. Now leave as well. There's no heart at all within the market system. No heart. Within the light of a crunch, when it falls like this, know that there was absolutely no heart whatsoever in some of the movements. There wasn't any ethics to the movements within the market. In an Islamic economic state, the operational market involves a private owner trading and securing contracts. But that private owner requires to observe ethical thinking while they are within the market. When the Holy Prophet came to Mecca, or I should say, while he was being raised in Mecca, he noticed that the markets and the movements within the markets lacked a lot of ethics. It wasn't people who had godly conscience while they were operating in the markets. It was more of a case of survival of the fittest. Dog eat dog. If it means I put someone in a predicament, so be it. They asked the Holy Prophet, before you announce your prophethood, what was the greatest moment in your life? He said, one of the greatest moments before I announced my prophethood was Hilf al-Fudul. They said to him, what's Hilf al-Fudul? He said, Hilf al-Fudul was when we showed ethics in the way we established ethics in the way you do deals in markets. He said to me, Ya Rasulullah, what do you mean? He said there was a person who had come whose name was Zabid. He was from the people of Yemen. This person, Zabid, from the people of Yemen, came to Mecca to trade. He knew that there was an operational market happening where private owners were able to trade within the market itself and secure contracts. When this Zabid bought his property, Al-As ibn Wa'il, the father of Ammar ibn Al-As, Al-As ibn Wa'il said, this is your property? He said, yes. He said, okay, can I just keep it for a bit? I just want to have a look at your property. Keep it. You know what Al-As did? He took the whole property and went. He said to him, by the way, you know you're in our land. You're not going to get your property back now. The market within Arabia lacked ethics. This person from Yemen stood up on the mountain. He called out, O people of Mecca, I have come to this market. I have come to Mecca expecting the people of Mecca to be people of ethics. All that I have found is that Al-As ibn Wa'il has taken all my property without any contract whatsoever. And I've not been given my rights back. Rasulullah, they say in some narrations, he was 20 at the time. A 20-year-old. 20 years before he announced his prophethood. The Holy Prophet said, we gathered in the house of Abdullah ibn Ja'dan. He said, when we gathered in his house, I sat there with the rest of those who are older than me. And when we sat and we discussed the issue, we decided that when a person comes to trade while they are in Mecca, there shouldn't just be a market operating. There should be akhlaq within the market. There should be a recognition that the person's life, his children, there are dependents on him. There should be a recognition on these people. there should be a recognition of the markets and there should be ethics within the markets. So what happened? They came out and they said that Zabid, all of his property will be returned back to him, and that the man will go back to Yemen with nobody obstructing his property. Notice the ethics, and hence the Quran talks of waylun lil mutaffifin. Al-mutaffifin, who are they? Al-mutaffifin are those who short-weigh you in change. You come to Mecca, you buy some cucumbers. He tells you there's 1 kilogram of cucumbers. What do you realize? When you go back home, there's half a kilogram and the rest of it is paper. When you recognize that the rest of it is paper, you realize that you've come to Mecca and you've been mocked or you've been conned. You came to a market, you expected ethical trading in the market. What did you realize at the end? They've short-weighed you in change and there is no ethics. And this short-weighing in change became a regular occurrence. That you find that Umar ibn al-Khattab, when he was the second caliph, Umar ibn al-Khattab would walk in the markets. It was through him seeing somebody who was just with the market and showing ethics that he found a future daughter-in-law for his son Asim. Because Umar ibn Khattab had a number of sons. One of them was Abdullah ibn Umar, and another was Asim ibn Umar. Asim, what had happened was, Umar was walking, he could hear the people in the market talking. He went past this lady and her daughter. When he went past the lady and the daughter, he heard the daughter saying, "Mum, don't con them. This is an Islamic market. There has to be ethics here." And the mother was saying, "Keep putting more water in. It will fill it up. It will look like the yogurt is heavier." And she was saying, "It doesn't matter. Allah is watching us in a market. And if we lack ethics in this market, then this isn't what Islam wanted." What was the lady doing? She was selling yogurt. And when she was selling yogurt, she knew that the yogurt doesn't fill up the whole container. So she was telling her daughter, put water right at the top so the container gets filled up. People won't know that most of it is water. For example, Umar heard this. The next day he went to his son Asim. He said, "Asim, you want to get married?" He said, "Yes." He said, "Come with me tomorrow." They started walking. He said, "Look at that girl over there. I just want you to walk past and look at the way she sells. Compare it with her mother." When Asim went and walked past, he recognized what? That the mother was trying to con in the market. The mother did not have that idea that there is a Lord who is making you accountable for what you're selling and buying. There wasn't a conception of halal and haram. It was just a conception of can you sell? When he heard the daughter go against his mother, he said, "Dad, I want to marry this girl." Eventually he married her. Do you know who this lady became? She was the grandmother of Umar bin Abdul Aziz. Umar bin Abdul Aziz is the great-grandson of Umar ibn al-Khattab. And that's why when they talk of Umar bin Abdul Aziz, they say Umar the second. And Umar ibn al-Khattab, they call him Umar the first. The idea was what? The idea was that within a market, he found someone for his son whose ethics were in a market. It wasn't just a case of market operation. It was a case of ethics within the market. Amir al-Mu'mineen, when he would walk within the markets, there were 3 reasons he would walk in the markets of Kufa. The first reason was that if the disabled of the community needed help, he would help them. And this is something we lack in our communities. We don't make access for the disabled members of our communities. We don't go and visit them. We don't open the doors for them. We don't even inquire if they need more help from us. And for some of us, it's a shame to mention we have disabled members in our community. It's a shame. But there's no shame about it whatsoever. You have a disabled member of the community, they deserve as much respect, if not more than other members of the community. Amir al-Mu'min would walk in the market of Kufa. If someone was not less able, he would help them. Number 2, he would ask and inquire about the people, whether they knew the laws of the market. Number 3, he would make sure that the staff were not being badly treated in a market. In the credit crunch and the economic breakdown, there were staff who were suddenly told, "Get out. At least help me. I can't just lose my house straight away. Doesn't matter. Go." That's it. The main thing is that the people at the top get their balances and the people at the bottom are forgotten about. Whereas you find Amir al-Mu'mineen would inquire about the staff. How are the staff in the operational market being treated? How are the buyers and the sellers being treated? Are the sellers being shown respect or no? When that slave girl, he saw her walking away one day and he saw her crying. And the man of justice walked towards her. He said to her, "Young girl, why'd you cry?" She said, "I went to buy 1 dinar of dates. I took the dates back to my master. My master isn't happy. He wants the money back. I went to that man in that stall to get my money back. That man in that stall said to me, I'm sorry, none of this money will come back to you. And he told me to go away. I am a slave and I have nobody to protect me. My parents are not around. Yet there is none like Amir al-Mu'mineen in a market to maintain ethics between the people of the market. Amir al-Mu'mineen came towards that man. He said to him, oh man, this slave over here, there is nobody to protect her rights. And in our markets we should have that ethics, that heart which should be there. Whereas most economic markets today, there is no heart. It's just dog eat dog. People want to finish each other. He said, have a heart. Look after her. Just give her her money back. The man pushed him away. And if there's one man you don't push away. When you pushed him away, the whole market became quiet. Everyone was stunned. You pushed Amir al-Mu'mineen? And when he was told, he went to the Imam and he said to him, forgive me. I didn't know it was you. He said, doesn't matter if it's me or somebody else. What do you mean you didn't know it's me? What if it was somebody else asking for the rights of the people in an operational market? That the people have been oppressed? At that moment, what does the narration say? He gave the money back, the Imam forgave him and moved away. Within the market, an ethics was sought to be established. That we're not just animals going to work Monday to Friday, 9 to 6, trying to earn and then go back home. No. We are human, divine beings in the sense that God breathed His Spirit into us. We have been given the respect. We are people of morality. When you enter the market atmosphere, show ethics between each other. That's the second area, the ethical aspect of social justice. The third area of Islamic economics, equitable distribution and looking after the rights of those who are deprived. That area is the most important area. That Islam today, if it sees poverty, how would it bring equilibrium? It would bring equilibrium through three different ways. The payment of zakat, the payment of khums, and the payment of sadaqah as a recommended form of charity. Zakat, which is to be paid on 9 items from the person's earning. Some people ask why. On the first level, the reason you pay it is because of the fact it's a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of your submission. He's testing, are you willing to give away from yourself or no? Or are you going to hold what I've given you and not think about distribution for those who are less well off than you? When this zakat is paid, the idea is that the state will take the zakat and it will distribute it to different members of society. To who? Understand the point. It will distribute to the fuqara, the masakin, عاملين عليها, مؤلفة قلوبهم, الرقاب, الغارمين, ابن السبيل, في سبيل الله. It gives you different criteria where the state will take the zakat and distribute it. To who? To the poor, and to those who are extremely needy, and to those who work within the state, and to those who have a debt, but nobody can help them with it. In an economic climate and a credit crunch like the one we have, someone has a debt, you finish his life off completely. No, you raise the interest rate so he can never pay it back again. Whereas in the zakat of the Baytul Mal, the idea is that when somebody has a debt, that person you make an effort to ensure that they are helped. If a person is lost on a journey, the zakat should help them. Every member of society, the zakat has a role to be distributed by the head of the Islamic State. Why? You may have the poor who are poor, and you may have the rich who are rich. You are trying to bring an equilibrium between them. Communism said, no, try and bring complete equality. Yet equality doesn't mean equity. There is a difference between what is equal and what is equitable. The idea in Islam wasn't that the rich go further rich and the poor go further poor, nor that they all earn the same. No. That there is an equilibrium where a person recognizes that I have a role to try and bring those people who aren't as well off as me, that some of my earnings I will give away. That's why that's on the first level. On the second level you have the payment of the khums towards the criteria given in chapter 8 verse 41 to the descendants of Al Muhammad. And on the third level you have the sadaqah. Sadaqah means what? Sadaqah is that recommended charity. Sometimes the Quran uses sadaqah for wajib charity as well. But sadaqah is that recommended charity, where you are willing to give away from yourself, not because it's obligatory, but because you recognize that the more you give away from yourself, the less poverty there'll be in the world. When Amir al-Mu'mineen says the reason there are poor in the world is because of the extravagance of the rich. Meaning that the rich, when they act extravagantly, there is no way that they are giving back to bring equilibrium. Sadaqah may not be obligatory, but the more you give away, the more there is equilibrium within the Islamic state. To the extent Qambar, the servant of Amir al-Mu'mineen, says only one day did I see him become sad with me. Once. Never again. When was it? He entered my house, he entered the house, he saw my room, I had hoarded some money to the side. He said to me, Qambar, you hoard this wealth while there are poor people in the streets. I would have expected somebody like you to take from this wealth and distributed it out. Not because it's obligatory, but because it's within you to be generous to give out. That same Qambar says, that generosity of Amir al-Mu'mineen is why in 4.5 years of Kufan economic society, he sought to bring back the equilibrium. Do you know why? Because those who came before him made this go like this and this like this. A seesaw. From the Khums of Africa in the 27th year after Hijrah, Uthman ibn Affan shared the Khums of Africa. Do you know how? 500,000 of the dirhams went to Marwan ibn al-Hakam. As you know, Marwan ibn al-Hakam, I'm sure, helped the religion of Islam so much when Rasulullah was alive. And 300,000 went to Harith ibn al-Hakam, and 100,000 went to Zayd ibn Thabit. That's equilibrium. When Talha and Zubair walk around in the earth, one's got palaces surrounding the whole of Basra, and the other one has horses, which the human being can't even count that number. That's equilibrium. As in when people came and stood up against Uthman ibn Affan, like Abu Dharr al-Ghafari. When Abu Dharr stood up against Uthman, why was it that he stood up? You think he stood up just because Abu Dharr was poor and Uthman was rich? He stood up because he spoke of the verse, chapter 9, verse 34, that there are those who hoard the wealth of the gold and the silver. For them there is a burning fire. You are the Khalifa of the Islamic State, and Marwan ibn al-Hakam gets that much of your share, and Harith ibn al-Hakam gets that much of your share, and Zayd ibn Thabit gets that much of your share. Is that what you are calling equilibrium? That when we wanted to bring equitable distribution, and we wanted to look after those who are deprived, it wasn't a case of us hoarding it at the top and nobody having anything. Abu Dharr al-Ghafari stands outside Uthman's house, telling him that the Quran said there are those who hoard gold and silver. Don't be of those who hoards it. You know what Uthman does? He sends him to Muawiyah in Damascus. It's as if Abu Dharr al-Ghafari became a tool to throw about. That's what he became. The fourth convert to the religion of Islam became a tool. You throw him. Here, go to Muawiyah. You know what he did when he went to Muawiyah? You think he stayed quiet? A person who wants to build an Islamic economic system wants equitable distribution, wants to bring equilibrium within the state. Abu Dharr stood outside the palace of Muawiyah, the famous green palace. And he said to him the verse again, those who hoard gold and silver, there is a punishment for them. And he'd say it outside his palace every morning. Every morning. That's the social justice fighter. That's the person who wants economic justice in the state which he lives. Every morning he'd call out. Muawiyah wrote to Uthman, he said, this man's giving me a headache. As in, I want to live a life of pomp. I want to show the Roman emperors what I am. He's giving me a headache. He said, send him back to me. You know when he sent him back? He sent him back and one argument with Ka'b al-Ahbar. And this is the irony of Islamic history. As in, sometimes you don't know what to do. Marwan ibn al-Hakam, Ka'b al-Ahbar, this is what became Islam later on. The irony of Islamic history, one argument with him. Abu Dharr al-Ghafari, who Rasulullah said is on the same level of taqwa as the Prophet Jesus alayhi salam. Abu Dharr al-Ghafari, this person was exiled to Rabada to die alone in the desert. Die alone. Him and his daughter. Abu Dharr, who helped build the religion of Islam, dies alone in a desert with nobody allowed to help him. Nobody was allowed to even go and feed the man. Dying in his 90s alone, a companion of Rasulullah. Yet ask yourself, Abu Dharr al-Ghafari, why did he give all his message to the religion of Islam? Why did he speak out? He spoke out because an Islamic economic state shouldn't allow the rich of the community, whoever they are, they could be married to 100 daughters. Whoever they are, this person should not be allowed to be of the richest, and the poor become of the poorest. He was made to die alone in that desert land, because he knew that the system required people to speak out for it. Qambar says, when I lived with Ali ibn Abi Talib, look at the difference between Amir al-Mu'mineen and everybody else. He said Ali ibn Abi Talib was so generous in his economics that the first thing he would do, he'd distribute every single bit of the Bayt al-Mal. Every single bit. And you know what then he'd do? He'd perform sujood in the areas where he has distributed it to say, oh Allah, you are a witness that the son of Abu Talib, this earth has not deceived him, and that he has distributed everything that was given to him. Qambar says he was so generous that in his distribution one day a group of people came, they wanted some food. So I said to him, oh Amir al-Mu'mineen, they want some food. So he said, okay Qambar, give them the food. He said, but the food is on a horse. He said, give them the food and the horse. He said, but the horse is connected to 10 horses. He said, give them the food and the 10 horses. Qambar at this moment jumped. Ali ibn Abi Talib said to him, Qambar, why are you jumping? What's wrong? He said, you are so generous, I thought you were going to give me away because I was holding on to the 10th of those horses. Imagine that generosity that exists. Within the school of Ahl al-Bayt, there was a generosity in the economic system, not only theology, not only ethics, a generosity to give away from oneself. And that's why our sixth Imam in Medina, 2 occasions highlight that in an Islamic economic system, even the Imam has to make sure that he's aware of whether the distribution is good or no. When Imam asks his servant, he says to him, do we have enough wheat in this house? The servant said yes. He said, do the people of Medina have enough wheat or no? He said, they are queuing up for rations of wheat. He said, how about us? He said, we have for the next 3 months. He said, take all the wheat and go and sell it. He said, Imam, what do you mean? He said, take the wheat and go and sell it. He said, but the Imam, if I go and sell the wheat, it's going to be hard for us to buy back wheat. He said, you expect me to live in a house where I have bread that easily, while the rest of Medina finds it hard? I will go and queue up with the rest of Medina. And I will queue up and buy in the way they are buying. But if you expect Ja'far ibn Muhammad to be sitting in his house while he has wheat and others don't, that's not from me. Even on another occasion, he, because of the number of fawat and the dependents in his house, he asked his servants, go and invest our money. His servant said, how much? He said, 1,000 dinar, go and invest it. The servant, when he went, he was going towards Egypt. He bought this piece of merchandise on his way towards Egypt. When he bought this piece of merchandise on his way towards Egypt, as he was about to enter Egypt, someone came to him. When they came to him, he asked them, what's happening in Egypt? They said to him, there's this piece of merchandise which the Egyptians need because they don't have any of it anymore. He said, I can't believe this. I've just bought that piece with the money. So the person said to him, go into Egypt and sell it with 100% profit. Make yourself 100% profit on the people. He went, he entered, and he made that profit, and then he came back out. He knew that the community was a poverty-stricken community, and that there should be equitable distribution in the way you deal. He came back to the Imam, he had 2 bags full of 1,000 dinar. The Imam said, well, what's this? He said, I've made 100% profit. He said, how? He said, I found out the people of Egypt were in need, so I exploited them by putting 100% on top. Imam said, take this away. Take it away. We have not built an Islamic economic system for my family to monopolize the wealth. You know that those people are in need. And you know we don't expect you to hoard the wealth of the people. Yet you went into Egypt knowing the people are in need and you put 100% on top of the price to make 100% profit on them? Is that what you expect? He said, oh my servants, understand one thing. That fighting with a sword is easier than earning money in a lawful manner. Fighting with a sword is easier than earning money in a lawful manner. So take it back and just give me what we have and we'll work with that for now. That particular ethos highlighted what? That at the center of the economic system in Islam, the heart was to be alive. And there was a recognition that there's a Lord who makes you accountable for the way you deal with your staff and the way you deal in the market and the way you deal with the rest of the Muslim community. And that's why, as one Sufi anecdote mentions, there is no gift better than having generosity in an economic system. The anecdote mentions that there was a lady, as a conclusion, there was a lady who was walking and she saw a stream. When she saw the stream, she came to wash her hands. She saw a beautiful jewel in the stream. When she saw that jewel, she took it out, she placed it in her bag and she continued. On her way, she met a man who said to her, oh lady, I am hungry. I have absolutely nothing to eat. Would you give me something to eat? She said, when I opened my bag, I was about to give the man, what? Food. But then the man looked at the jewel and he said to me, I want that jewel. This is a Sufi anecdote. I want that jewel. I want you to give it to me. So she said, take the jewel, go. He took the jewel and he walked away. Then he came back a few moments later, and when he came back, what did he say? He said to her, "Oh lady, take your jewel back." She said to him, "Why?" He said to her, "It's not the jewel I want. I'd rather want to have that heart which gave you the ability to give that jewel away." And in an economic system which doesn't have a heart which is willing to bring equilibrium and equal distribution and social justice, is not an Islamic economic system. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to raise us with Muhammad and al Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala. And to allow us to be amongst those who follow the message of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. And to raise us with the Imam of our time, Imam Sahib al-Asr al-Zaman. Allow us to be amongst those who follow his message. Oh Allah, bless those who have organized this majlis. Allow them to continue to serve Muhammad and al-Muhammad in all their efforts and all their actions, and to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Raise them with the Imam of their time and allow them to receive intercession in this world and the hereafter. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the Surah Al-Fatiha, but before it the loudest of salawat.